YouTube. Welcome to my podcast, the Hacking Autism podcast. This show is all about making autism your unfair advantage. I'm your host, Kelsey Terry, and I've got autism myself. It has been the secret sauce of my professional success, which is what I've been sharing with people recently. And I have conversations with people from all over the world that are somehow connected to autism, and it potentially being the secret sauce of someone they know or their very own lives. So without further ado, let's listen in. Maisie, welcome to the show. Would you please introduce yourself and tell us what do you do for a living and why do you care about autism?
Well, my name is Macy Sutantio. I was born and raised in Indonesia, Macy Sutantio, but nobody knows how to say my last name. So you can skip my last name. Just call me Macy, like the store. About autism. I started when I was an undergraduate at UCLA. I wanted to work with special needs kids, and somehow while I was going to school at UCLA, I came across a classroom for little kids with autism. And I just fell in love with this population, and I started working with kids with autism as a behavioral specialist, as an ABA therapist, and worked myself up through just being a therapist, senior therapist, supervising therapist, and eventually I moved to the Bay Area here to run a clinic, an ABA clinic for CARD. And then I did that for about 12 or so years. And then I found this program called Relationship Development Intervention. Mm-hmm. And it's completely different because I work with parents and only work with parents. So I became a parent coach. And at about the same time, I became a mom myself. So that kind of fits perfectly. And then I've been doing that. I've never looked back. Left ABA, just became fully immersed, working with families at home. And I've been a parent coach for about 17 plus years.
Wow.
I love it. I don't like the driving part, but sure. I love working with families at home.
And so do you drive to most of your clients or do they come to you?
No, we used to have a clinic in Sunnyvale, but I was never there because I was always working at home.
Sure.
With parents or traveling.
Okay.
Doing lots of presentations. And as of 2014, I started running the RDI certification training for professionals for Asia. So I have trainees now who want to do what I do as a parent coach for RDI program. And they're from all over Asia. Well, I do have one trainee in Russia and New Zealand.
Wow.
So it's kind of like just sort of that region. I guess Asia is a big place, but I love it. We do online classes and we come together once a year to actually practice working with kids and their parents. So I get to travel to Bali and Taiwan. I think this year I'm going to Kuala Lumpur to run you have to work hard, but play harder.
Sure, to balance it all out.
We play students' homework.
Sure.
You finish what we have to do, and then we go out in the evenings. I try to make it fun.
So before you had your son and before he was diagnosed, you were already in that space. Why, out of all the people in the world to help, was that something that was at the front of your mind?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Why I love everything about autism. I think I love how every individual diagnosed with autism is very different. And, I think there's some similarities, but they're all very, very different. And working with each family, I think it's very much like a give and take and learning process for me. So it's important for me as far as my personal growth professionally as well as a parent myself. So, now I do a lot of presentations for parents of very young children, just talking about relationship and the science behind it. And I love it. But I think autism, my son, we never really diagnosed him. Like every year we meet with his teacher, and me and my husband, we always look at each other. Is this the year that we might need to get a diagnosis? And, every year we keep an eye on him because he's spectrumy and he's got sensory processing disorders.
Sure.
But we're very blessed because my husband and I are both certified in RDI.
Mm-hmm.
So we feel like we have more parenting tools. So we're not afraid, and we just take it, the challenges as they come. And that's what we do. But I think autism is a very unique diagnosis. And we have a lot of people diagnosed with autism.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in light of your son not officially being diagnosed, and that's totally fine. I'm curious, is the trigger for doing that in your mind to receive specific services, or what would the benefit, or why hold out, or just because you're so in tune with that, what is the benefit of adding that label to your son versus like he's spectrumy, just thoughts on that.
To us, I think as his parents, to us, his diagnosis will not change the way we view him as a unique person.
Mm-hmm.
He is a person. Yeah. That's always number one. Yes, he has challenges, but he's a good apprentice and he trusts us.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the one thing that I'm super grateful that we know how to build that trust from day one. And I also know through my work in ABA, I started in the 80s and now 2019, there is a standard set of early intervention that's given when young children receive a diagnosis of autism. And that's typically ABA, speech therapy, occupational therapy, sensory integration, amongst a few other things. That's usually a standardized package recommended.
Sure.
But I also know that those recommended treatments, they are small pieces.
Mm-hmm. To the bigger picture of him as a kid. Mm-hmm.
Right. And when I think autism is just a label, but that person is still unique and requires so many other bigger pieces. Mm-hmm. Right. So I think for me as his parent, I know at the end of the day, I have to take what professionals I hire to help me. But our family is the main supporting cast to help him move forward. Sure. And that's, now we're talking about the family dynamics, and including my 14-year-old neurotypical daughter, because, if she feels jealous, that could create, tension in the family. It's not about my son. It's not about whether he has this label or not. It's always about the family first. The family should come first.
Sure.
And then everything else the pieces will work together. So, and I also know that what we can get by putting a label, the free intervention, is not necessarily, there is such a thing as too much intervention.
I would agree personally.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I don't want my kid to not be with us, but I don't want to be the driver to all these places. Sure. I can't bear, with my jet lag, and I can't even manage, we only have 2 kids, but usually for most of my clients, I think your role as parents are not as your child's guide anymore. Your role is primarily the schedule manager and also the driver. You have to make a lot of money it's just not, you're not the primary, you're not in the driver's seat. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Well, and
yeah.
Based off what you're saying, I mean, like you've already gone down the ABA road professionally yourself.
Yeah.
And so you have pivoted, from ABA to, is it RDI?
Yeah.
And so you don't want to give that package to your son because you've already seen where that road leads. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you're aligned with. Is that like a fair summary?
That's a fair summary because, sure. I also know that just through what I've learned through ABA, which is an important piece
sure.
to many, many
mm-hmm.
people. I don't want to discredit that intervention or that method. But I think being able to parent a child who is a little bit different, that's a whole different art. I think I call it an art because mm-hmm. it's ongoing, it's fluid, it's colorful, and it's all of that, right? And I think that journey is important. And I know that it's easy to just say, okay, my child has autism. That means I have this checklist that I have to check off. Otherwise, I'm not a good parent. But then you forget
mm-hmm.
that, he's just a person and he goes through changes. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. And what we need to develop as that child's parents is just the competence to do mm-hmm. different things. Right. So I can talk a lot about ABA because, that's how I started.
Yeah.
ABA is really good to develop skills.
Mm-hmm.
Things we could see with our eyes, right? Being able to sit down and being able to answer questions, being able to learn how to read, like all these skills, things we can see with our eyes. But the mind, to develop someone's mind, you have to grow that. You have to expose mm-hmm. that child to real world experiences.
Mm-hmm.
How to make decisions, how to recognize, okay, I need to slow down and think about this. And you can't teach that behind closed doors and sitting table chair. So that's why
mm-hmm.
I don't want those package.
Sure. No, that makes perfect sense to me. And I remember when we were in San Francisco I think it was dim sum.
Yes.
With your son. And there was a new, it's not Jiaozi, but it was like a new thing for him that he had not yet tried.
Right.
And so it was great to watch that firsthand, that dialogue between an aware parent that says, okay, well, you've not tried this before, but like, would we be open to, a couple bites of X? And then getting to watch that firsthand was really, really fun to see. I also really enjoy your son. He's quite the character. And
he's a good kid. He's got a really good heart.
Mm-hmm.
He's 10 now. He still has the sensory challenge. It was just food. Usually there are times that we go at the restaurant, there's mm-hmm. nothing in front of him
mm-hmm.
that he eat. And I think if I didn't know about RDI, I think if I only know about ABA mm-hmm. and not the mindful parenting stuff,
mm-hmm.
I think I would bribe him. I would tell him, oh, well,
sure.
I would just do the consequence or I don't know, maybe trying to feed him. I still see parents in Asia feeding their kids at the age of 10.
I would probably do
all these crazy things. But, I don't do that because I believe that someday he's going to get there. He's going to have find his way to get there.
Oh,
to the best
definitely.
of his abilities, right? And he's going to have to do that. So I learned to let go. I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the reason why, I mean, the diagnosis is not important. And then when parents come to me, they say, oh, my child is like high functioning, or my child has PDD-NOS, my child has Asperger's. And then I meet the family and I meet the child, the person, and the core deficits are the same. You know, the challenges are the same, you know. So to me, that label's not that important. You know, we work with what we have, and they can all overcome, you know, in their own ways.
So that brings me to my next topic, working with a wide variety of parents throughout the Bay Area where you're located. What are 3 common themes that come up again and again when they turn to you, a professional, to say, I don't know how to deal with X, Y, or Z? 1, what are those things? And then 2, what are common tips or suggestions that the listeners of this podcast can consider? I know we have a number of parents that also listen in to this conversation or are listening in. So what would you say to them about the 3 common things and then 3 common ways to counter those challenges?
When people come to me, the one situation is the number one common, the common thing is crisis. That parents are most of the time in crisis. They feel like they don't know what to do. They want to fix this condition, autism, but there's really no quick fix, right? Sure. So I think what we do with that number one, I guess, issue is to help parents overcome crisis. The way we do that is to educate parents about how we think about autism. You know, autism has its strengths. So to just parents realize that there are a lot you can work with. And, you know, if you build that trust with your child, with your family member, then you can really help that person grow. But the process begins with the parents first. So that's number one, overcome crisis. So I think secondly, I tell all my clients that don't let autism, or it could be other diagnoses as well, don't let that diagnosis or that label define your child and define your family. So that's really important. And I tell parents, let's go back and see if we can find you as a person first. So a lot of times, I would say almost 10 out of 10, parents come to me and their lives have been consumed by autism. They lose touch, like they lose their own sense of self, which is really, really important because hopefully you can pass on the good part about yourself as an adult and as a mom or as a dad to your child. But you're not able to do that because you're just stuck in this crisis. So I would say that's number 2, is that we really help parents to take a step back and really go back to their roots of who they are as a person first, because then you can figure out, okay, as a parent, these are important qualities that's important to me as a mom that I want to practice and pass on to my kid. So
when you say you go back to them, are you referring to the adults or the child in that situation?
The adults.
Okay. So what truly matters to you, Sally? Who are you independent of this diagnosis?
Yeah.
Okay.
And typically they don't know how to parent this child who's different. Right. But if you don't know what's important to you, if you don't know, what's the best part of you that you want to pass on to your kids, then it's just like everything is a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Mostly it's just going through the day, just managing this every day is the same. But there's really no personal growth. If there's no personal growth, I think it's very hard to have, to help your other family members to grow. You're supposed to grow together as a family.
Agreed.
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important. And then lastly is just self-care. Self-care. That once you let something consume you, something, like autism, it could be other things, but you just kind of let yourself go. And it's really hard to pour when your cup is empty. So I think that's for all of us.
Sure. And so when it comes to self-care of a parent that has someone on the spectrum in their life, do you think that self-care looks differently because finding a babysitter is more complex?
Yeah.
To escape to Napa for the weekend looks very differently. I mean, and maybe a PCA comes into the situation. I'm not sure, but I'd be curious to see what guidance you would give differently, what self-care looks like in the context of a spectrum situation.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when we work with families, it's very important for us that both parents jump in.
Sure.
To the parent training from the beginning, even though typically there's one parent who has more time to practice. But to be able to support each other in terms of creating 10 minutes, 15 minutes for each other where it's all about you, your me time, doing something that sparks your joy. Sure. And it doesn't have to be fancy, I think, like 15 minutes of just taking a cat nap. And my husband would lock me in our bedroom and lock the door behind him so that the kids cannot go in the room. Sure. And over the years, my kids know if my son asks, "Where's mom?" She's resting, and then he walks the other way. Sure. So creating healthier habits together, and that includes setting the boundaries also for your kids, and that's important for them to learn very early on because they have to do that with friends. They have to do that as adults. So I think you can. One of the parent homework that we do very early on is to map out everybody's schedule. So this is maybe a good tip for everyone. Sure. Is you look at, let's say you're a family of 4 and you look at dad's schedule, mom's schedule, big sister's schedule, and then the child with ASD schedule. Probably the busiest one is the young one with ASD because he's got a gazillion of therapy. Once you put that on paper, so when we do it half-hour increments, you will see this child is not a child anymore. He does not have time to play. He does not have time to relax. And parents are always like, when we put it on paper and put it on a clipboard, they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have any time. I need time just to decompress. And my child is always on the go, and then we can put it into perspective. That's why this kid is, has become resistant because he's overscheduled, for example. But that issue is usually with everyone in the family, so it's hard to practice mindfulness where this child needs his or her parent to partner up and practice when the parents are they don't have time to practice. So it's both ways. It takes two to tango. Sure. But going back to making sure that it's self-care, it's number one. So if we do 1, 2, 3, the first one is finding time to self-care, take care of yourself. And folding laundry while watching TV does not count. That's what I say. That doesn't count. And believe me, parents, mom will say, but I like doing that. No. That doesn't count. You're still doing something for, it's self-care means it's all about you and you do you. And I don't care if it's 15 minutes, twice a day, but it's really important.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we met in Palo Alto while I was traveling to California.
Yeah.
And you shared with me, I mean, one, about your career and what your day job looks like, but we also discussed a shared interest of ours where there's this belief that we as a country in the United States, and I mean, also just the Western world, we pour a lot of resources into kids while they're, K through 12 in the United States when it comes to resources and IEPs, but there's very little to catch kids or young adults when they graduate high school. And it doesn't always make sense to go off to Stanford or go to a tech college. And so we were dialoguing about what does autism in the workplace look like? And so I'd love to hear, what is this project that you're working on and how can the listeners potentially get involved?
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I started this project called Autism Career Pathways, ACP.
Okay.
Short. It's basically a huge project, and it's about educating the community. So specifically, I want to educate small businesses. We all know that in the Silicon Valley, there are big companies, Microsoft, SAP, and Google. They're the pioneers in trying to figure out how they can hire people with autism. I'm trying to educate small businesses. I think it would be great if every small business would even meet a differently abled person and explore the idea of maybe I can hire this person or give an internship to this person so this person can grow, can leave the house and can interact with others and learn in the real world. So that's what the project is all about. The first part of ACP is I'm designing an activity-based autism career assessment tool, and I've done the pilot trials with 7 young adults who all did really well. It's all activity-based. So in a nutshell, the assessment tool provides an opportunity for each candidate to come into the interview prepared. So each one of them can practice doing certain things that they feel that they're really, really good at. So one young man brought in his guitar and showcased with a song that he wrote, and another one brought in he has beautiful penmanship, so he sells greeting cards, handmade greeting cards. So he brought a set of those, and he did all this. And we videotaped the assessment. And in my mind, my goal is to be able to have like a 10-minute highlights of each candidate and what this person can do really well. And to support that, I'm working on a color-coded base summary.
Perfect. Yeah.
When I talk about that, which I thought was brilliant. So I've got a young man in Maryland who's really good at coding, and he's helping me develop this color coding system.
Perfect.
So I want it to be meaningful for the differently able person to be able to look at, these are green, means I'm really good at these. And these are yellow, I need to work on this or get better at these for these areas and so on. So that's what I'm working on. I'm editing the videos, working on the app with my intern, Marilyn, and so it goes a little bit at a time. I
just have one question for you. When do you sleep?
Oh,
not much?
Yeah, not very well. Not very well. I just have lots of ideas rolling around in my head, and, I don't know. Yeah. But I just do my best, and I just do it a little bit at a time, and trying to balance everything.
Well, and I've been working with a nonprofit in Minneapolis called Mindshift, and they have created an assessment, and that's something that like they're very, very good at. And what they do is it's also activity based, but they'll also put the incorrect instructions. They'll basically have someone construct something with Legos and see. One, if they notice it. Two, how do they ask for help? Do they call that out? And so they've got a couple of really, really interesting ways of gauging someone's capacity to
I love that.
work.
You sabotage it.
It's gentle sabotage. It's with Lego.
Yes.
So no lives are at stake. But I thought that was so fascinating because it's a great way to see, do you just, do you ignore it, or do you say, hey, this isn't clear, or this seems wrong. I can't put these pieces in this way. And so I've been partnering with them looking to hire people on the spectrum for my testing company. And it's been a really powerful story to partner with this nonprofit in connecting with people that have different skill sets, because I think we just need more groups like what you're doing and what Mindshift is doing, where these assessments are in place so that employers like myself are empowered to make those right decisions. If their heart is to help people on the spectrum, knowing, okay, could you be a barista? Could you help me cut flowers in my boutique, etc.? So
yeah.
How can people find out about the career testing program, the Autism Pathways career?
They can always email me. My email is, macy@catchclinic.com. They can, our Instagram account at ASD Career Pathways. There's a link with a digital flyer to the landing page. So I actually love to travel, and I will go if there's a group of people. I'll go visit you if you have, say, I don't know, 6 to 8 maybe people who would be willing to go through the assessment pilot trials with me, and then I'll fly and do it. So I'm trying to do it in stages. I'm trying to do it group by group, learning from the process in between, and hopefully I can have a good assessment tool. And I need I want to eventually write a handbook, employer handbook, that can share the information, the best of both worlds. I know there's already books like that. So lots of work to be done just to work on the pieces the right way.
Well, as someone that's on the spectrum, I just appreciate your willingness to work so diligently on such a process, because I think we need this scattered throughout the country, not just in Minneapolis, not just in California, but I think we're all stronger together. And so if you're interested in this, please click on the link in the show notes where you are finding this episode, and I'll get all the relevant details to connect with Maisie there. With that, anything else you would like to say to our listeners, or I don't know, any advice or guidance for those of us that are on the spectrum and trying to figure out what is our gifting, or how can we be more mindful from a professional like yourself? Any tips or tricks you might have?
If you're an adult with autism, or you have other conditions, I think you have to just do what you like, explore, find your passion, grow from it, and do it really well, because that's going to be your thing, your unique thing to do, and share it with the world. Find a way to share it with the world. Talk about it, write about it, find other people who share that, because together we're stronger. And never let people say that you can't do it. I mean, never let anyone tell you that you shouldn't do that, or you can't do it because of autism. Anything's possible. So, and my advice to parents is to, relationship first and explore. Get on the floor and explore with your child, and you'll be able to find that gift, that uniqueness that you can help grow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Hacking Autism podcast. If you have made it this far, I would love for you to connect with me on Twitter. The handle is iHackAutism, or you can find me on Instagram under Hacking Autism Podcast. I would love to talk with you, hear what you found to be most valuable, because most of you are listening to this on Spotify, but you can also find me on YouTube as well. I want to fine-tune this show. I want to tweak the questions that I ask to those that you would find helpful or valuable. So I would love to connect with you on basically all of those social platforms. If you found this to be helpful, encouraging, informative, practical, consider sharing this with a friend. Text it to them. You don't have to tweet it. You could screenshot your phone as you're listening to this episode, but consider passing it on. There's no higher praise that can be offered to any creative medium than the word of mouth and the powerful vehicle of being told by a friend, hey, you should check this out. Hey, this was super helpful. This changed my perspective on things. So anyways, just an ask. If you don't do it, you can keep listening in. And with that, we'll catch you guys next time.